So I am doing my gem therapy tip about hallucinations, and baby, I had to stand up for this one. Let me stop. Hallucinations really get grossly misunderstood, as with a lot of different mental health symptoms and diagnosis. Believe it or not, hallucinations is a diagnosis in and of itself. So just like depression can be a part of bipolar, depression can be part of a mood disorder, hallucinations can be a diagnosis in and of itself. So we look at audio, visual, and tactile hallucinations. That means hallucinations that you hear, hallucinations that you see, and hallucinations that touch. So, sometimes, like I said, hallucinations can be part of another diagnosis. Hallucinations can be found in schizophrenia, most commonly. Hallucinations can be found in schizoaffective disorder. More delusions than hallucinations, but it can happen. Hallucinations can happen as a part of anxiety. Some people can get so anxious that, again, they lose place with reality, lose touch with reality, and it's like derealization. They feel like they're out of their body, and they can also start to see and hear things. Hallucinations can be part of bipolar type 1, and there's a few others that hallucinations can be a part of. But hallucinations themselves, again, are things that you can see, hear, or feel that no one else can see, hear, or feel. That is like the bare bone basics definition of hallucinations. Now, here's the thing with a hallucination. Hallucination does not automatically mean that you crazy. I said crazy, but it's not an indication that you're crazy. To be honest with you, in my experience, and for those of you who have been watching my videos, you know that I have 20 plus years of experience. I don't know how that's possible when I'm only 25, but I've been in this field for over 20 years. I'm a licensed clinical social worker, which means that I'm licensed in mental health. I'm also a licensed clinical addiction specialist, and I'm licensed in addiction services. I'm also a certified supervisor, and I have a whole bunch of certified trainings and certifications in other areas. But, I'm saying this to kind of qualify me for the next statement, which is that hallucinations, when I've been doing it throughout all these years, 9 out of 10 children have hallucinations, believe it or not. And most of the time they'll hear someone calling them and nobody's there, or they'll see, with kids, they see kind of flashing lights. Bugs is a common hallucination for everybody, or they'll see something pass by. A lot of kids they say imaginary friends, but when I do mental health screening, I find out that these are not just their imagination, that they're actually very specific details that let me know that they're actually hallucinating, that this I don't know what you call it. Sometimes they're animals, sometimes they're characters, whatever it is that they're seeing is not real, and it's a little past imagination. I'm not going to get into all the ways I screen for that, but it's very clear that, they're having a hallucination. But kids, actually 9 out of 10 of them admit that they heard or saw something that wasn't there, especially, if they've been watching something. And I'm not going to get into that either, because that's going to take me a whole way. But I'm just saying, overall, kids are very common to have hallucinations. Believe it or not, 7 out of 10 adults admit that they also have auditory hallucinations or visual hallucinations, or they'll feel something kind of poke or nudge them that nobody else can. One of the most common tactile hallucinations that people feel is that chill, that coldness, to the point where it feels like it's actually pricking you. So anyway, adults will admit that they have 7 out of 10. If I say, look, just because you have a hallucination doesn't mean you crazy, doesn't mean that there's something wrong with you. I just want to be able to assess and see if there's a risk factor to your hallucinations. So that brings me to the last part of this video. Hallucinations in and of themselves are not a major mental health health concern unless they disrupt your life. Meaning that if you're hallucinating to the point where you can't perform your job because you're seeing and hearing, then that's a problem. I worked with someone who had audio hallucinations at work. So she's talking to somebody in public, like, get away, go, stop. I'm not playing with you, cussing them out. That's an issue, you know? So if it disrupts your work, then we really need to work on how to manage it and possibly take medications to manage it, because there may be some chemical imbalance that's prompting these hallucinations. The other thing that we're looking for, when I say disrupt your life, sometimes we have what's called command hallucinations. Those are also ones that we really want to pay attention to. A lot of command hallucinations are telling people to do things. Even with the children, if they have these invisible friends that are telling them to do bad things or telling them to do things, there's always a risk. We want them to be able to talk about what these voices are telling them to do, because if they're telling them to hurt themselves or hurt other people, then there's a serious concern, right? There's a risk there. The other thing is that, we want to know if these voices are tormenting you, if they're saying bad things. Hi, I had to do part 2 because I ran out of time. So if you haven't seen part 1 of my video about hallucinations, please watch it before you continue here. Where I left off was telling people the type of hallucinations to pay attention to. And I was talking about, of course, the command hallucinations that tell you to do things, where there's things that you can't see, things that other people can't see or hear that are telling you to do things. We want to pay attention to that to make sure they're not telling you to do things that can hurt yourself or hurt other people. That's hurt you physically, hurt them physically, or things that are causing, problems in your relationship, because these voices are telling you to do bad things, to say bad things, So we want to pay attention to that. The other, of course, I was when I left off, I was talking about those voices that torment you. So I had someone who the voices would constantly talk to her and tell her she's stupid, tell her nobody's going to love her, nobody's going to bother her, and a lot of time, nobody's going to care about her, or she's going to be a failure. And a lot of times when we examine these voices, I'm not saying that sometimes our own thoughts don't say these bad things to ourselves, because in therapy, we talk about something called life scripts, where we kind of repeat the same type of things to ourselves that we heard throughout our life. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about these voices that were talking to her were sometimes male, sometimes female, sometimes there were multiple voices, and they're all saying bad things, which is torment to the individual. I had a young man that I worked with, and those voices were just like, I hate you, I'm going to get you, I promise. And they're scary, they're threatening. So we want to pay attention to those type of voices as well. Those are the tormenting voices. As far as tactile communications, if it's harming you, if you feel something pinching you, scratching you, one person felt something biting, those are also things we want to pay attention to, because that's a form of harm. So we're always in mental health looking to protect people so that they can live healthy lives. All of us have illnesses, and we want to manage our illnesses so that we can still be able to function in life. That's the same thing with mental health. Again, hallucinations doesn't have to mean that it's a terrible thing. It is something that should be assessed by a mental health professional so that you are addressing any of the risks. I know a lot of people, even myself included, we believe in God. We know God to be real. We hear God speak to us. We hear different commands. We may see things, and we might call it a multiple realm and all these different things. And, from a mental health perspective, I'm saying to you that the risk mentally is always when it's going to harm you. Harm is what we're looking at from a mental health perspective. If you feel you are having a spiritual experience, then, you have to talk to your spiritual leader or your spiritual advisor. But for mental health, keyword being health, we want to keep you healthy. We want to keep you alive. You know what I mean? And, that's where I'm going to leave that at, For Christians, y'all should look and see if it ain't happening in the Bible. Maybe you shouldn't be having that experience. Maybe you do have a mental health. For others, really, really pay attention, because maybe I'll talk about this one. I don't know. One of the symptoms with mental health that comes up in some of the diagnosis is hyper religiosity, but it's a mental health concern. But anyway, I went on topic. I was talking about hallucinations. Please, please, please make sure you are talking to a professional. I stood up for this one because I thought it was that important. And, you know, you're worth it. Take care of yourself, gems. Take care. Bye-bye.